Manchester United are not rushing to appoint our next permanent manager, but I'll tell you one thing. The conversation is rapidly changing around it. I'm not just talking about Carrick's strong start, because the truth is there's not a big enough pool of games to make a judgment yet. Something else is happening around the club with the potential candidates for the role that we've got to discuss and the impact it could have on United's choices. Let's talk about Carrick, about Tuchel, Ancelotti, Enrique, and what's happening. We all know that United are not rushing to appoint our next permanent manager, nor do I think that we need to, and of course with the World Cup coming up, it complicates things. But the landscape really has changed over this last month, from when Carrick was appointed as interim head coach to where we are now, which I want to run through, because does it... Yeah, I think it maybe doesn't change things because we don't know the whole course of this Carrick story so far, but... Let me just run through it all, right? Because when Amram was sacked just over a month ago now, Carrick came in. We knew that he was here until the end of the season. We were excited and hopeful to see what change he could bring. And I think it's fair to say, in his first 5 games, he's impressed. 4 wins and a draw. 1 manager of the month in January. I'll speak about that a little bit later. But when it comes to what the papers were saying after Amram was sacked, I'm going to run through this in chronological order. The first name that was most prominently linked to the United job was Oliver Glasner. Jason Burt from the Telegraph and a couple of others actually sort of considering him as a front runner. Were they just doing that because his contract ran out at Crystal Palace in the summer? Maybe, but Iraola's also ran out in the summer. And I think Marco Silva's at Fulham. I don't think anyone's talking about those two now. But Glasner wiped himself off the potential list. I know. For a lot of you, probably for me as well, he wouldn't have been high on my choices. But he basically pulled out the shotgun, went straight after Crystal Palace's ownership in public, a bit like what Ruben Amram did towards the end. And it's just a huge red flag. Huge red flag. For me, it sort of ruled him out as a possible option. So Glasner, considered a front runner, gone. A second name on a lot of people's lists was Thomas Tuchel. But now Thomas Tuchel is off that list too, because he's signed a new 4-year deal. It's already confirmed and official by England. He signed a new deal that will keep him as England coach, manager, until 2028. So that's 2 candidates gone. I honestly, this list I'm about to run through now, I'll speak about Ancelotti next. I think all of these managers were probably maybe not all of them were in the top 5, but they were certainly some heavy-hitting candidates for this potential role to be United's boss next season. Now, Gary Neville was, I suppose, the one advocating for Ancelotti, the experience that he's had, the clubs that he's managed. I question whether, at this point in his career, sort of like the twilight of his career, whether United would simply be too big a job for him. Not that he couldn't manage it, because he's managed many. Anyway, no point having a conversation about Ancelotti, because he's going to be signing a new contract with Brazil. I think what you're kind of seeing here from the English FA, from the Brazilian FA, I don't think this is just a direct consequence of those managers being linked with the Manchester United job, but I imagine it came up in the conversations or came up in their thought process of why they wanted both of those managers to sign new deals, and maybe before the World Cup as well. Because, of course, Ancelotti with Brazil and Tuchel with England. So that's Glasner out of the equation. He ruled himself out with his actions. And that's Tuchel and Ancelotti, who I think would have been in most people's top 5 potential candidates for the next permanent role at United. So all of these things combined, along with Michael Carrick having a, quite frankly, stunning start as United's interim. Now, this is something I keep reiterating to all of you. Like, there should be no snap judgment on Carrick. There should be no judgment on Carrick after 5 games. There should be no judgment on Carrick after 10 games. I think when we get towards... I reckon towards the end of March, it feels like we'll have enough games and we'll have enough evidence over a long enough period of time to go, right, I can probably make a judgment on how I think Carrick would actually be if he was to become United's head coach next season. But it's at this point, with no Glasner in the frame, with no Tuchel in the frame, and no Ancelotti in the frame. If it's not Carrick, what other direction are you looking in? And honestly, I think there's only a couple of names on this list now. Julian Nagelsmann is going to be one of them. The Germany manager, will he sign a new deal with Germany? No one knows about that. But he's on that list. And I think for a lot of you, this is the man who might top all of the lists. If we're going around and Manchester United are puffing their chest out and we're saying we're the biggest club in the world and we want the best in the world, you're getting Enrique. Only reason that the Enrique conversations have existed is because there's been whispers, and it might just be whiffy newspaper reports and just agent talks, sod knows, suggesting that he might not sign a new contract to PSG. But there may well be another conversation, just how we're talking about Tuchel signing a new deal, Ancelotti signing a new deal. It may well be that in a week or two's time, we come out and we're talking about the fact that Enrique signed a new deal. And maybe Nagelsmann has signed a new deal. But for a lot of United fans, he would be top of that list. And honestly, if you look any further than that, you just start getting into, I'm not going to use the word desperate, I think it's a bit harsh, but you just start getting into a list of managers that I think go, am I really going to have a conversation about this? Does Zerbi fall straight in that category? You want volatile managers? Yeah, peak volatility with him. Xabi Alonso, it just strikes me that Slot's going to get sacked and Xabi Alonso is going to go to Liverpool maybe 2 years after he was linked with the job in the first place when he stayed at Leverkusen. I think that will happen. I don't really... Obviously, it didn't work out for him at Real Madrid. Does that make him a bad manager? No, but it certainly wasn't the right club for him. Don't know what that means in terms of Xabi Alonso and United, if you want to entertain that conversation. I don't really want to entertain any conversations about Poch either. I don't know why. Where's this coming from? I think I've seen Gary Neville mention his name a couple of times. I don't know whether there's anybody else mentioning his name. Why is Poch still a conversation in 2026? A few years ago, sure. Yeah, I'd have a conversation. But now? Mate, his stock has fallen way too far. I've got no energy for the idea about going towards Poch in the same way that I might have had that energy a few years ago. So, when Carrick was first appointed, it was Glasner first link frontrunner, gone. Then we're talking about Tuchel and Ancelotti and Enrique. Well, Tuchel's now signed a new deal. Ancelotti signed a new deal. Enrique's in, I don't know whether he's in talks with signing a new deal at PSG, but he's very much in a job with a team that's a treble winner. And would he want to work in the United environment? There's question marks. But other than that, I think the shortlist is becoming a lot shorter. I think that's why I wanted to do this video. Now, it doesn't guarantee that Michael Carrick's going to be getting a job by default. No, if he's going to get the job, he needs to earn it. He needs to deserve that job rather than going, wow, there's actually nobody else out there. So, okay, let's stick with it. The only other two managers right now off the top of my head that I think they should maybe be entertained as a conversation is Nagelsmann and Enrique. And both of them are in jobs. And there's no real talk linking either of them to the position. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens from this point, because it's been a terrific start from Carrick, and that's just putting it mildly. He's got Everton next. I actually don't know what our fixtures are after that. If he gets United back into the Champions League, he would have succeeded this season. And I think United would only move away from that and the work that's happened between January and May, which, if we get into the Champions League, would be marked as a success. They'd only push that to the side if the right manager was available, and quite a lot of the names that were linked to the start are already off the table. Let's find out, because maybe in a couple of weeks' time, Enrique, if he signs that new deal, will be too. Just wanted to know what you think about this. That's just sort of like a full update as to what's happened, because I think the landscape has changed since Carrick came in.